Let's wargame this a little bit here. What are voters telling you if something happened to Trump, there was some legal issue, whatever, for whatever reason, he doesn't wind up going through? She goes in with all the delegates. She may wind up being the nominee, but would Trump voters then on Election Day come out for her because Trump has really poisoned the well against her?
And this is the issue. The voters we've been talking to today since we've first been in South Carolina have said that they don't like that she started to become more critical of Donald Trump. That's isolating more of the Republican base, even if it might be bringing over some of those more independents who are becoming less enamored with Donald Trump as the years go by. But the other issue here is the more that Donald Trump is pursued in these legal contexts, the more people say that they don't like that he's been pursued by lawfare, is one of the terms that you hear used quite often. And so it makes them more likely to support Donald Trump and say, I'm not going to support anyone else. The long bet is that when it comes to November, which is still a ways away, that they would still vote Republican. And that's one of the bets that Nikki Haley's campaign is having to play.
All right, now let's flip over to the other side of the aisle here. Joe Biden, continuing concerns about where he winds up in all of this. Now, they've got a convention coming up, too, in Chicago. Chicago is where the Democrats had an incredibly chaotic campaign in 1968. What are the chances, you think, that something happens with Biden at that convention or even after? How would it work for them to tap Joe Biden on the shoulders? Because every single poll is saying Americans think he's too old, he doesn't have the mental facility to keep doing the job, and they don't want to wind up with a situation where they vote Biden and get Kamala Harris.
Yeah, look, this is the conversation that everyone's having. I talk to Australians all the time who bring it up, but it's absolutely on the minds of Americans. And what we need to remember here is these conventions where the candidates are confirmed, the parties set the rules. So the Democratic National Committee and the Republican National Committee set the rules for these conventions, which confirm who will be the candidate on the ballot come November. So right now, my understanding after speaking to quite a few experts around what the rules are for the Democratic National Convention is if Joe Biden is confirmed and then for some reason steps back after that, the DNC can appoint someone, and that the RNC currently their procedure would be to reconvene the convention, which is a huge undertaking. Sheer money-wise would be extraordinary, but it gives the DNC more options to just say, hey, actually, we're going to take so-and-so, maybe a Gavin Newsom, into the equation, because Kamala Harris does have very poor personal polling, and that's one of the things that Nikki Haley brings up quite consistently that does rate well for her, is she says, hey, look, at the end of this, we're going to have a female president if you like it or not. It's going to be me or Kamala Harris, up to you. So this is where the DNC has some room to maneuver before the convention in playing its superdelegates or afterwards and simply appointing their preferred pick.
And now this whole age issue around Joe Biden, that's going to keep playing out because, number one, we've got a State of the Union address coming up. Number two, Robert Hur, who was the special counsel who wrote that bombshell report about Joe Biden where he basically said he was, an elderly old guy with poor memory and all of that. He's testifying to Congress. What do we expect to come out of that? And is that going to wind up further aggravating this issue that Joe Biden is, either doddering, corrupt, or both?
Well, look, Democrats are already spinning this, saying Robert Hur was too specific in this report. He was gratuitous in his descriptions of Joe Biden, and it was inappropriate that he was going into these descriptions about his memory, about what he was bringing up, and how it was impacted by his age. What's likely to happen here when he does testify to Congress is that they will ask him specific questions around what Joe Biden has counted after this report. So specifically, Joe Biden said that he was so enraged when the special prosecutor raised his son, Beau. That's why he got mixed up with his details, and that's why he was so upset. But Robert Hur has now backgrounded out of this deposition process for the special hearing, and then now, before the special hearing, is likely to say that it was actually Joe Biden who raised that in the first place, unprompted. What this does is just give new conversation to the fact that there's dispute around what was said by who, when, and how much of that is contributed to by Joe Biden's failing memory. So this is going to be absolutely appointment viewing for anyone watching this election race.
Well, keep watching here on the U.S. report because we're going to bring you all of that. But one final quick one for you. I love this story. Lawyers for Hunter Biden have claimed that a picture a government prosecutors are using to support a tax fraud case against him that shows neatly arranged lines of some sort of powder. Well, actually, those are neatly arranged lines of sawdust from a carpentry shop and not something else. Annelise, this doesn't pass, dare I say it, the sniff test, does it?
Well, I mean, we always wondered what was in his consulting business. Maybe it's woodwork. Maybe this is what was happening with all of his consulting jobs. Who knows? I don't think it passes the pub test, the sniff test either. I don't know. It's just another torrid chapter and a very uncomfortable discussion.
Absolutely. Annelise Nielsen, live from South Carolina. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.